Equality has been missing from my life, but it's never too late.
What we know of segregation, Jim Crow, and so forth, the Black deaf community was not insulated from any of that. It's painful, really painful, but we have to address this pain and we can't just push it away. If we look the other way, then we'll never have the opportunity to heal.
What does this memorial mean for the Black deaf community? It's really important for the Black deaf community, especially when Black deaf students arrive at Gallaudet. For many of them, it is a part of their dream. And upon seeing this memorial, it can be an inspirational force that lets them know that Gallaudet recognizes and values the Black deaf community, a feeling of welcome.
If you are interested in donating, here's the link to do so. Thank you.
Hello, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the story of the Miller family. The Miller family includes mother Louise B. Miller and her 4 children, Kenneth, Carol, Gerald, and Justin. All 3 of her sons are deaf, and her daughter Carol is hearing. Louise B. Miller's story is one of courage and tireless advocacy. It changed the history of deaf education in this country. It was Mrs. Miller who decided to enroll her son Kenneth in our very own Kendall School. In 1946, her son was denied enrollment because he was Black. However, Mrs. Miller didn't stop her fight, and she persisted until finally in 1952, she decided to lead a class action lawsuit against the Washington, D.C. Board of Education to fight for the right of her son to be educated here at Kendall School. Mrs. Miller won that lawsuit. That then forced the establishment of the Kendall School Division II for Negroes, which was the name at that time. That was the first lawsuit that started the process of dismantling the doctrine upheld by the Supreme Court decision, Plessy versus Ferguson. The doctrine known as separate but equal. By winning the lawsuit, it set the precedent for dismantling that legal argument and lent support to the final decision by the Supreme Court in the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. Very few people understand the connection between Louise B. Miller's fight for her deaf son, Kenneth, and the success of the Supreme Court case Brown versus Board of Education. This family has shown great patience and support of this community as we assess and reflect on our past mistakes and looking at ourselves today to further examine our current actions and supporting our movement to create a better and more just future for all of our deaf children, especially Black, Latina, Latino, Latinx, Native American, Asian Pacific, and those of diverse identities. We are proud that the family is here with us to continue to share their stories, for us to come to understand our history and what we need to continue to wrestle with and reflect upon and further understand. I remain grateful to the Miller family for building their relationship with us during the last few years. I am proud that they are here with us as a community and so very grateful to them. I now look to Dr. Carolyn McCaskill to lead this celebration of the Miller family story. The Center for Black Deaf Studies will be a place to centralize, document, and gather the stories of the history of the Kendall Division II School. Thank you.
Equality has been missing from my life.
Hi, we are ready.
Yes, we certainly are. I was waiting for Sister Carolyn, and here we are.
Well, good morning, Sister Liz. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic this morning. So what are we doing today, my dear?
Well, you know what? I am really so excited about the program for today. This webinar is the second one to be hosted by the Center for Black Deaf Studies, and I'm absolutely over the moon thrilled that we're here to talk about the Kendall Division II School Memorial Project. So we're going to talk about what the plan is, and that's going to be part of our agenda today. We're also going to introduce the Miller family, and we'll get a chance to see an interview as well as some photos. We'll have a chance to interview each one of them actually. And then after that, we plan to enter a discussion about the Kendall Division II Memorial Project itself, We have a steering committee, and we'll learn from that steering committee about the mass design team and their efforts in terms of the design for the memorial project. And another piece of this, a very important piece of it, is talking about the naming process for the memorial. So we'll spend some time talking about that. And then towards the end, we'll have times for questions. And so, as I said, I'm really excited to get going. And oh, I didn't even introduce myself to the audience. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Carolyn McCaskill, the founding director of the Center for Black Deaf Studies and professor in the Deaf Studies Department at Gallaudet University. It seems that Dr. Moore has, her video has frozen. Give us a moment.
All right, Dr. Carolyn McCaskill, thank you. Really, this is a watershed moment for our community. I know that individuals are very thrilled and so looking forward to this event. And the interpreter no longer has visual access on Dr. Moore. She is experiencing intermittent freezing.
Yes, I'm noticing that as well. Hmm. Dr. Moore has asked that I take over. Perhaps we can go ahead with a portion of the program. The next portion, let's proceed with the interview video clip. And we can proceed that with an interview of Carol Miller, please. If we can have Carol Miller. And now I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to interview each individual member of the Miller family. First of all, I have here with me Kenneth Miller. So, Kenneth, tell me a little bit about your name, about yourself. This is your name sign, correct?
Yes.
And are you deaf or hard of hearing?
I've been deaf since 3 years old.
3 years old, I see. And you learned sign from your family, or exactly how did you start learning sign language?
Well, I learned at the Philadelphia school. It was an oral school for the deaf. And then later at Kendall School, that's where I went. And that's when I changed from oral to sign language. And I use sign language ever since.
So are you retired now? You're still working? What are you up to?
I retired from my job at the Washington Post after 47 years.
Wow. How many years?
Since 1957, I was 16 years old.
16.
I went on to graduate. I worked part time and then eventually full time in 1965 at the Washington Post. So in total, I've worked there for 47 years of my career, and then I went to retire.
47 years. Wow. So what do you do now with your free time?
I spend time at home resting and spending time with my family and my brother.
So did you grow up, did you graduate through the Kindle school?
I started in 1952 at Philadelphia School and then moved to Maryland in 1960.
Did you remember like some of the things that you learned while you were in school?
No, uh,
Nothing, huh? You
didn't.
really weren't able to learn anything in that environment.
That's how school was at that time. There wasn't much being learned. In the fall of 1954, I learned a little bit. At the Philadelphia school, the instruction was good, but at the Kendall school, it was lousy.
What was the difference between the two schools, Kendall and Philadelphia?
Even though it was the Philadelphia school was oral, it was good education. But at Kendall, I didn't learn anything there.
Hmm. So you wanted to go to a school, you wanted to get a good education. Your mother absolutely wanted that for you. So she filed a lawsuit. Do you remember anything about that?
I don't. I was young at that time.
Right, you were pretty young. So you commuted to Philadelphia to attend that school, and then later on you moved back to Washington, D.C., and then went to the Kendall School. So how did that feel?
So I went to Kendall school after Philadelphia, and I was just so shocked. I just sat there and didn't learn
Mm.
much. I was 1952 to 1954, sometime there, but again, didn't learn much. Most of the time, we were just playing around.
So did you miss the school there in Philadelphia?
Yeah, my mother paid tuition, I think $3,000 for school.
Wow, that was quite expensive at that time. So Kendall was a segregated school in the past. Do you remember that?
I do. 1952, I remember at the time being a commuting student, going back and forth to school.
How did it feel to have to commute to school?
I would commute on a cab, and I did that for about a year or so.
You rode a cab. How was that?
It felt weird. It felt very odd. The cab would drop off my different friends at their houses.
How old were you at that time?
I was 11.
Ah, 11 years old. Wow.
And then from 11 to 12,
Then you moved? Hmm. So, did you know anything about the fact that it was segregated? There were black areas and white areas.
I don't
Did you
remember
know
any.
anything about that?
I think it was when I was around 18, I started to notice, but before that, I never really realized it.
So, when you began to notice, what is it that caught your attention?
Well, I wasn't learning much, just playing around. That was it.
Right, but then you said when you became 18 or 19, that's when you started to realize that there was segregation between Black people and white people. And
Yes,
currently today, do you still see that segregation happening?
not as much. Before there was segregation, but now there's been integration.
So you see that integration now.
Yeah, it started mixing students in 1954.
So in 1954, there was more segregation than there is now?
In 1954, there was well, that's when it was integration. I remember outside it would be cold. We would try to learn a lot. When the children in the different school, white school, they learned a lot, but at Kendall, we didn't learn much. But after 1954, things got better for education.
So do you think it got better, that people have a better life, that Black people have a better life because of the Black Lives Movement? Or you think it's the same, that it really hasn't improved?
Black Lives Matter movement. Hmm.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd want to share about that?
Well, I want to share that I played, sports back in the day. I played basketball and I was on the wrestling team.
Really, really? Were you a champion in that? How'd you do in sports?
Yeah, I actually won a wrestling championship when I defeated someone who was much larger than me. I had the right technique and I was able to grapple him down and I won.
Nice. Oh, so you had a very high rank. Nice.
Yeah, I think the gentleman's name was Frank, who I beat. Might have been from Canada.
Oh, so you wrestled somebody by the name of Frank and won. All right.
Yeah.
So, did you have some thoughts you'd like to share with us, Gerald?
Yes, before the Black Lives Matter movement, I even think about Martin Luther King. And during that time, I had a pretty good life. After Martin Luther King passed, I began to wonder and question about, why we had certain issues within our community. I began to notice how white people marginalize Black people in different ways. And also just, being upset about segregation and not having people recognize my common humanity. When I was growing up, one of my best friends was white, but I still saw segregation at play. And then we saw the rise of the KKK and white supremacists. And so I've come to the realization that sometimes people choose to segregate themselves because they dislike each other. I think Black Lives Matter has helped to improve things.
So you do think that the Black Lives Matter movement has improved things?
I do. For 500 years, Black people have been oppressed and marginalized, and it's time for a change. We have to learn to accept, white people have to learn how to accept Black people and what we want and desire. Sometimes those riots need to happen because that's when people wake up.
So do you think with what's happening with the Black Lives Movement now, where more white people are becoming more aware of what's going on and they're focusing more attention on this matter, do you think that's happening?
I do. I actually don't believe in marches. Like, I think sometimes marches are appropriate, but to be heard, you sometimes need to do something different because people will have a march and then everyone goes back home and forgets everything the next day. Sometimes people listen to riots better because properties are being damaged.
I want to go back to talking about Kendall School. Do you remember stories from your mom and how your mom actually had to fight for your brother to have a better education and also fought on behalf of other Black deaf children? There were 24 in that school. Do you remember your mom talking about that at all?
My mom actually passed away when I was 15, so I wasn't privy to very much when I was younger, but later over time, when I became an adult, I realized her tireless efforts impacted the Black deaf community. Otherwise, Kenneth would have gone to school in Baltimore. And, we had a right to be educated. And I think that's something that my mom became a champion for.
Hmm. So when you think about what happened with your mom and what happened in terms of her support of those other 23 students, can you
I remember
comment on that?
I remember Robert Milborn came to see my mom at home to thank her. And I didn't quite know why he did that. Later, I came to the realization that she had been such an advocate for Black deaf students to be educated in the district. She brought that lawsuit, won it, against the DC Board of Education. And so without her, where would we be? I am happy that my mom did what she did so that we would have the opportunity to learn.
Yes, we're proud of your mom as well.
If you had been able to meet her, she was such a sweet lady.
So when you think about Gallaudet hosting this interview for your family, as well as setting up the Kindle Division 2 Memorial Project, what comes to mind?
I'm very appreciative. We have to be cognizant of the events that have occurred in the past. When I think of President Elstad, I don't really care for him. He denied my brother Kenneth the opportunity to attend the school, the Kendall School here on campus. And so that's why Kenneth had to go to Philadelphia. That makes no sense whatsoever. I remember we used to practice at Gallaudet on campus in front of the old gym, and President Elstad would be outside when we left our practice, just looking at us. He'd be there week after week, and so that didn't really sit well with me at the time. I'm very happy that we see shifts happening in our community to make things better.
Are there any concluding thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I would love to see a Black deaf person as president of Gallaudet someday. Bobby is great, but I would love to have a Black deaf president as we think about MBDA. And also, I really would appreciate having Elstad Auditorium renamed. I don't think it should honor President Elstad because he was not a supporter of Black deaf students being educated here on campus. So we know that there have been inequalities that have been perpetuated, and we need to work for equality.
In your opinion, do you think things have improved for the better at Gallaudet or not?
I think they have improved for the better.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciated talking with you.
So you experienced segregated schools, didn't you?
Yes.
Do you remember when your brother went to the segregated school? What do you remember from that time and what he went through?
Well, I was little, so I really didn't understand what was going on for him in school. So I really had no idea about segregation. I found out as time went on.
Can you give me an example?
I found out the discrimination that my brother went through because it was segregated. He had to go all the way to Philadelphia instead of coming here to Kendall. The Philadelphia school was mixed. There were black kids, Jewish kids, white kids, but here at Kendall it was segregated. And so it was a process to get it integrated.
So you remember him commuting to Philadelphia and then moving back. How did that make you feel, Justin?
Well, it was different. It was different. I remember coming home for Christmas and Thanksgiving and when school closed, like for the summer.
You grew up in Washington, D.C. I'm sure you saw a lot in terms of the civil rights movement, race riots. Tell me a little bit about that, please.
Yes, I grew up in a black neighborhood and didn't see white people very often. I remember sometimes going into a store and seeing a white person and they would be watching me as I was shopping. I was thinking, why are they looking at me? But my father was an officer, so it really didn't bother me. I didn't let it bother me. So when Martin Luther King was killed, I was actually out in the streets that day and there were riots and upheaval all over. And my wife had just gave birth to one of our children. And I remember my sister saying, "You need to get home. You need to get home." And I said, "I walk home." And she said, You need to be safe." And so I started walking home. And as I got close to my home, a police car pulled up and asked me what I was doing. I said, "I'm going home." And they motioned for me to get in the car. So I did. I got in the car. And I was about 18 years old at that time. And they said, "Now go in the house," and they wouldn't leave until I went into the house. They wanted to make sure I was going to go into the house. So what that experience taught me was that segregation in the past, it was very hard for us to deal with as a people. And when Martin Luther King was killed and there was rioting and all that upheaval, if anything like that were ever to happen again, I'm going to make sure I stay in the house.
So you were living in a predominantly Black neighborhood.
Yes.
Now, has that neighborhood changed?
Well, now there are a lot of restaurants and bars and condos and other buildings in the neighborhood. But in the past, it was really bad. There was a lot of shooting in that area. And because I couldn't hear, my sister could hear shooting in the neighborhood and could hear gunshots. Not exactly. To be truthful, what I did see, though, was not good.
And so you have seen more white individuals move into the area. How do you think that has helped to reduce crime or make the neighborhood more safe?
It hasn't. I mean, white people are moving in, but there's still a lot of break-ins, there's a lot of property damage, there's a lot of theft, there's a lot of armed robbery in the area. And so there are a few officers there who see who the problem people are, and you can see people have bars on their window, and for the ones who don't, they're easy targets. So it hasn't really improved.
Mm-hmm. So I'm been asking you about the Kindle School and your upbringing. As you look back and reflect on those memories about your experiences at the Kindle School, would you mind sharing a little bit more with me?
I went to Kindle school. I wanted to have an education. And I went back. I was seen as a troublemaker when I went back. And my mother really fought for me to stay there for my last year of school. So I did have some problems while I was there. Um,
What do you see as the differences between then and now?
well, the difference is that there was no education in my time. Our opportunities were very limited. Whereas now, people actually get an education when they go to school, and it can help them to prepare for the future. In my time, what it gave me was a very limited education.
So, Justin, thank you so much for sharing your stories with me. I am wondering if you can tell me a little bit more about Gallaudet recognizing your family, your mom's actions, the Kendall School Memorial, and what that means to you. What are your thoughts about this entire project?
Well, I'm very happy that my mom stood up for us and that she faced the Board of Education and told them that their actions were against children and preventing them from getting a good education. And my mother fought. She was a fighter. And I'm very proud of my mother for doing that because she stood up for what was right. And every time someone stands up for what is right in terms of education, that's a good thing.
Powerful. Such interesting history and experiences. Thank you so much for sharing that. Truly do appreciate. What a moving and significant family.
Yes, indeed. They're truly beautiful, and I enjoyed the opportunity immensely.
I understand that Carol Miller is here to also have a conversation with you, Carolyn. And so at this time, we would like to invite Miss Carol Miller to join us.
Yes, indeed. And I'm happy that you saw the interview that we did with the three brothers. But now I'm so excited to interview Miss Carol. Hello, Miss Carol. How are you?
Hello.
I would like to start with this interview by thanking you for graciously taking the time out of your schedule and coming here to interview with us once again. The first question that I would like to ask you is about your family. Can you tell me about your mother and what you remember about your mother in terms of the lawsuit and stories surrounding that? Was there anything that your mom shared with you?
Well, Kenneth is 3 years older than I am, so uh, we were not told specifically what was going on, but you could pick up the anguish and the angst around the house about Kenneth's education, how my parents were trying to get him into school here, and that was not being allowed. I remember the talk about the school in Maryland and my mother taking him there and not wanting to leave him. They said if she left him and he started to cry, that they would just put him in a room and just let him cry. And he was about 5 or 6 years old at that time. So that was not an option for my mother. That's when she brought him home and she decided that they would make other arrangements. I think they started this process in 1946. That's the first letter that I have that shares an insight into what was going on. So it took about 6 years before Kenneth was actually formally educated. And that's a loss for any student, and especially one who's going to need some extra support. It was finally decided after all of the ins and outs and the letters back and forth, and the denial of his acceptance into Kendall, that they decided to send him away to Philadelphia. And he was 8 years old, I think he told me. He was 8 years old at the time, so I would have been about 5, maybe 5 going on 6. So I remember my brother leaving. I remember the trips going back and forth to Pennsylvania to see him in school. We were able to spend holidays together, and we went to Virginia during the summer, and we had all of the summer together. But prior to Kenneth getting into school, I could see the impact that not being able to communicate effectively. He could communicate about certain concrete things, but as for, I don't like this, I don't want to do that, that makes me sad, this makes me happy, those kinds of things were, you're not able to explain fully what's going on. So my grandmother, who was a very strong presence in our lives, believed that if he just put his mind to it, he could be able to hear and talk. So she was not a fan of sign language. So when he left Washington and he went to Pennsylvania, Kenneth came back. Kenneth was signing. He was able to communicate with his teachers, with his friends, and sort of left us behind. After he went into Kendall, for the 2 years that he was there between 52 and 54, when the Brown decision was decided, there was a difference in what was being taught and how the students were being taught. So, and I think, again, that's 2 more years of losing, I guess, a really solid foundation of education. And those things do make a difference. I have letters where my mother started writing again after the children had been admitted to Kendall on a segregated basis, that she was noticing that what was presented to the white children and what was presented to the Black children was different. And she said, wait a minute, we need to get things equalized even more. So I don't know, I'd have to go back and look at information to see how that turned out. But my mother was a homemaker for a while until my grandmother retired, and then she went to work. She had gone to Howard University. She finished 3.5 years there, and then she decided she was in love and she had to get married. And grandmother said, I will send you as long as you don't get married. And when she did, she left Howard. So she had 3.5 years at Howard University. She started out as a music major because she played the piano. She sang in the choir. She was an excellent swimmer. But she left Howard and she eventually went to work in the federal government, and Daddy went to work for the police department. We lived in the same house on T Street with my grandmother that she had purchased way back in 1920. And Kenneth and Justin are still living there. So I've rambled on. Is there anything you would like for me to share?
I'm just excited to hear more of the story. I enjoy every minute that you share with us about your mom. She seems to have been a wonderful woman. I wish absolutely I could have met her in person, but she is gone and no longer with us. But as we think about her memories, they live on through her children. And she has that legacy that continues. So I really do appreciate you sharing that, Miss Carol. I could sit here all day. I could listen to you all day. I love the stories. I would never tire of it. I do want to ask you another question, though, about the house. You mentioned that you have the house, and the house is on the historic ledger, from my understanding. It is a landmark in Washington, D.C. Is that correct? Because it is historic in nature. Could you talk about that? And do people, so people can learn about this historic house? And you mentioned your brothers still live in the house as well.
Yes, the house is still there, 1204 T Street. Some years ago, my mother was very interested in family and she loved taking pictures. So we have a lot of pictures of old family members. But she had given me the name of some of the older family members. And I've always been interested in the history. So I started to gather more information about what went on with Kenneth. And I actually called the DC Historical Society to find out what they had, because as far as I was concerned, it was a fantastic story. It was wonderful. The court case was settled in their favor. It was 2 years before Brown. And when I called the Historical Society, they sort of gave me, what? Who? I don't know anything about Louise Miller or Kenneth Miller. We have no information. So one of the things I did was to call and find out how they could be placed on the African American Heritage Trail. And so after some writing and some explaining, someone says, why, that's fantastic. And we think that the case does deserve to be recognized. So I guess maybe it's been 12, 14 years ago that a plaque was placed in front of the house. And this is actually the house that Grandma bought, and Kenneth and Justin are still there.
Wow, what a wonderful memory. Can you talk to us about, as you know, the Kellogg Hotel on the Gallaudet campus was built. There is a plaque that's located there, and it stands behind the name sign of the Kellogg Conference Center. How do you feel about the placement of the plaque currently?
I was not aware that the plaque was being placed when it was done. And I'm so appreciative of the efforts that went into having it placed, because without it, I think that this may have just sort of floated off into history and not have been recognized. So I'm glad it's there. I often wondered about the placement of it and whether it was thought that perhaps if the visitors came through the hotel, they would see it, but it wasn't visible from the street for the people who were walking through. And I have, my cousin has a friend who said she was there and she had no idea that the plaque was there. So I think a change and more recognition is probably, the time has come. But I'm glad that it was there. And for those who work to have it placed, I want to tell them how much I appreciate it.
Thank you. So that leads me to my next question. And this question is about the Kendall School Memorial Project that is currently a work in progress. How do you feel about this new memorial project? And do you believe that it's an opportunity for us to share awareness with people about the memorial school?
I think it's an excellent opportunity. I have enjoyed working with everyone who has put forth such a great effort, and to thank all of them, to thank you and Yvonne. I think it's a great opportunity for something to be done that allows people to come to grips with what has gone on. I know there are a lot of people who say, oh, it's in the past, you should just get over it. But sometimes there are pains and there are experiences that stay with you, and they stay with you forever. And even sometimes when you can sort of tuck them away, there are times when they come forth and they do bring, you put your head down and you shake your head, and sometimes the tears will come because you understand what went on. And not only with my brother, with all of the children who had to be taken away from their homes and sent away and were not receiving that one-on-one love and support that they needed. They had an extra challenge to deal with. And then the challenge of being alone, to me, is just unimaginable. When I went to Kendall, when we were walking with Dr. Cordano and we were with Kenneth, and he looked at the Kendall School and the old building that I had not seen before because it was in a part of campus that I did not have access to. And he said I was sitting on the front waiting for my mother to come out because she was in a meeting to find out whether or not they would allow me to come to the school. And it's just, that's something that touches you to the point and you can't get over that. And so many children have gone through that. And here, what he had not been introduced to the information though, you're different, there's something wrong with you. You can't go to school with other people. And he's standing there trying to figure out, well, why? So I think the memorial will give us an opportunity, and I understand the design will allow us to enter it and sort of walk through and come to grips with what has gone on by the time we get to the end. And maybe there's a space there that will give us a place where we can think and heal and say the time has come for us to move forward.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's definitely time. This memorial project, it really is a way for us to start healing. And Gallaudet owes that to your family. And I definitely can't wait for it to be built. I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. And again, I want to thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences with us. Thank you, Miss Carol.
It
Thank
was
you.
truly amazing. You know, when we were watching the interviews with the individual family members and also the live interviews with Carol Miller that you just did, it was so very powerful, Carolyn. So I'm wondering if you could perhaps share with us some of your experiences. What was it like for you to conduct those interviews with the Miller family members?
Sure, Liz, I would be happy to share. Indescribable. Awesome. I kept sort of pinching myself and saying, is this really happening? Am I really interviewing the Miller family? During the time it was even happening, it was like a dream come true for me. Absolutely surreal. And definitely a historic moment in our time. And I am so happy that Gallaudet is supporting this effort. And on that particular day, November 19th, 2020, we were welcomed. We welcomed the Miller family to the Gallaudet campus. We put out the red carpet and we served this family to the best of our ability. So it was quite a formal event. We had a formal car service, bring them to the campus. We also provided breakfast and lunch for them on that day. And we just wanted to make them feel at home as we conducted the interviews and did the filming. And it was just an amazing experience. I remember walking over to the hotel and taking a picture of each family member standing next to the memorial plaque that now stands. And as I think back to that, the one word that comes to mind is awesome. I mean, I was so pleased, and we enjoyed watching the filming. We enjoyed interviewing them and learning much more about the family. And this is history that needs to be documented.
Indeed, it does. Can you tell us what you want us to be aware of as one of the four themes, which we know we're now currently focused on awareness? Tell us a little bit more. What should we be aware of?
Sure. When we think about awareness, we need to think about the fact that the Miller family had this experience. And part of the Kindle Division Memorial is divided into 4 phases. Awareness is the first of those phases. Freedom, remembrance, and healing are the rest of those. And we'll be advertising those later on. But we're beginning this webinar by focusing on awareness. And basically, we want people to know about the lawsuit. We want them to know about what happened during this period in history and the fact that you can't erase this history. We know when we think about, general American history, we learn specific things in school. We learn, things about Black history, maybe, general things, but we don't learn about Black deaf history. That's what's missing. And we really need those stories of the Black deaf history to be told. That Black deaf experience, such as what happened with the Miller family and this lawsuit, is important. And it's important that many people know about this. This was a landmark lawsuit that happened before the Brown versus the Board of Education lawsuit. And it's something that needs to be shared with the world. It's that critically important.
I agree with you that awareness is the first phase of this process. And it will also give Black deaf people an opportunity to share their narratives.
Definitely.
We may find that many of their stories are painful because of the history that's there throughout the years. And so we have to think how those stories or narratives have been neglected. They have been buried in history. And it is past time to create a space where we can increase our awareness of their narratives. We need to get those narratives out to the wider public. I completely agree with you, Carolyn. Go ahead.
And yes, I just would like to mention, as Miss Carol explained when she was talking about the plaque on the back of the name for the Kellogg Center, many people overlook it. They don't see it at all. It's easy to miss. And that's not acceptable. It's not right. We have to do better. We have to memorialize the history. We have to show that we value our history.
It needs to become more visible. I concur. Now, my next question for you is, what is so unique about this event? Can you talk to us a little bit about Black-owned businesses that you actually use for your event when you hosted the Millers on campus?
Yes. What was unique about the event? Well, when we got together with the Miller family, that in itself was a unique experience, being with the family. As I mentioned, we served both breakfast and lunch that day.
Awesome.
And it was catered by a Black deaf chef.
Even better.
It was amazingly delicious. I can't even explain it to you. And we were so proud to have a Black deaf chef there to prepare the food for us, to prepare this meal. His name is Jamar Higgins, and I just have to brag a little bit on him. We also had a Black deaf photographer who was present, Billy Butler. He was a photographer, so we could see things from his point of view. He's obviously skilled with capturing the emotion of the subjects. It was just an amazing, amazing day. So hopefully in the future, we will have more Black deaf owned businesses involved in terms of the communication and marketing in connection with that project. So looking forward to it.
This is all so amazing. I hope that we continue to use our Black-owned businesses for future projects.
Oh, most definitely.
For the second, third, and fourth phase of this project.
Most definitely, we will.
Anything else you'd like to share with us? about the November 19th event?
I think what I would like to share is some of the points in time during that video. For example, when we were talking with Kenneth, and Kenneth talked about the Kindle building. He talked about walking on campus, and as we walked on campus, I could see Kenneth looking at the Kindle building, and I could see he was going back into his memory bank just by his look. And at that moment, I just took the deepest breath. It was like I wanted to freeze that moment in time. Can you imagine being a 7-year-old boy and told, no, you can't come to the school? So that moment when he glanced at the building is just stuck in my memory. It was a heart-rending moment. And then we had President Bobby Cordano with us, and he looked at her and he said, I remember. And he began to explain his heartache, and she apologized to him for the pain that he'd experienced, for what his family went through, for the injustice, for that entire experience. And to be there at that moment, for me, I will remember that forever. It's etched into my memory forever. So this family is so gracious in helping us heal. It was a healing moment for them. It was a healing moment for us. So it really went full circle. And we owe them this. We owe them this time to heal. So I was absolutely floored by those moments.
How remarkable and what a powerful moment. I'm so pleased that the family had an opportunity to gather and to get to this place of healing through this process. It's very significant. Thank you, Carolyn, for sharing this very powerful experience that you had in working with the family. I now will turn it back over to Yvonne Black. Yvonne will now explain some of the history and the work that has gone into the Kendall School Division II Memorial. Yvonne is our project lead and has been doing a tremendous job investing her time to make sure that this project succeeds. Yvonne.
Greetings, everyone. All the people who are able to make themselves available to watch today, especially our younger people over at Kendall, and to everyone else at schools for the deaf across the country who are our future. First and foremost, I wanted to make sure that we show you the November 19th family photos from when the family arrived. I know that you're all eager to see them, so take a moment. The deaf photographer, Billy Butler, was able to take some of these photographs. It's actually not what's being showed right now, but what took place on November 19th with the family. No, Shara, it was a time with the family. That's what we're looking to display here. So we're trying to find the November 19th photographs when the Miller family arrived on campus. Okay, it should show after this. We noticed that there was an annex building, and that was to be replaced with the conference center. The annex building was not impressive by any means. The other side of Gallaudet campus had, appropriate standard buildings you would expect to see in an educational community, but the annex at that time was not up to that quality. At the time when they were preparing to demolish the building, there were people who started to talk about it. And there were members of the Gallaudet community that were shocked to find out that that building had actually been built to instruct Black deaf students during segregation. That's something that was constantly swept under the rug and not talked about. Excellent. So in the photographs, we were able to see different members of the family. I wanted to take a moment to explain the work that we've been doing up to this point, as well as the status and where we currently are. Nearly 3 years ago, President Bobby Cordano attended the National Black Deaf Advocates Conference, and that took place in Baltimore. At that point, it was the Black Deaf Archives that caught our interest. And in doing so, the question was asked, what's going on with the plaque that's been there for such a long time on campus? But the noise for that plaque to be changed actually started before then. And it was the Black Lives Matter movement that had 6 students, which Risa Shaw was a professor for, who started complaining and really making noise about the plaque. And it was important to make sure that the history behind that area was more widely known. So the Mass Design Group called for different community stakeholders to share their voice and input on the Kendall Memorial. There was input from the Black deaf community, the Gallaudet community. We were able to get a pulse on what the community felt was significant in this area and being the memorial. And that eventually led to having a stakeholder group. And the stakeholder group worked very diligently. And you can actually see what the memorial site looks like. Right outside of the conference center, it looks like a very barren area, almost like a cow path. What we want to do is to really beautify that area and show the symbolism that it has. So you'll see different photographs that have been taken of stakeholders. And these are the people who have been doing this work all along to honor the Miller family. Now, this group of stakeholders exists, but that's not all. In fact, all of you, as members of the community, are also our stakeholders. You have a voice. And now I'll allow Carolyn I'll allow Carolyn afterwards to share more about that. But the point is that it doesn't need to be limited to feedback from Gallaudet. It could be young people. It could be members of the Black community, Brown community. We want everyone to have a part in this process. It's truly my pleasure to see this project grow and to become such a primary and most important project. We really want to capture the essence, and there's thanks that need to be acknowledged. Thank you for your patience as we share bits and pieces of information. Thank you to University Communications, the admissions office, for releasing me to do this work. Thank you to the executive directors who have provided their support. And to everyone on campus who invested, even those of you who are watching right now, you are a part of this legacy and you helped it become what it is. I certainly don't want to overlook the donors who have given significant contributions from various sources in order to make the memorial what it is that we know now. I would like to thank all of you in advance for your future donations and contributions that may begin today and going forward. I would like to share a little bit of information. We will have a community engagement process that involves 3 different sessions. We want to make sure that you're able to attend. Carolyn and Liz will be able to share some of the details that come along with the naming process. We want to be sure that your voice and your input is considered. Lastly, we'd like to share some exciting news. The project manager, the person who is responsible to manage the entire project and see it to its success as far as the Kendall Memorial Project, we've already have a position that we've advertised. So please take a look at the information in the chat. We've shared a link where you can apply today. If you are interested, you can certainly explore more. And if you know someone else who might be interested, feel free to share. Thank you. And again, especially to the Miller family, to Louise Miller for fighting the good fight, and for all of you for believing in this project. Once again, thank you. It's been a long time coming, and change gonna come. I look forward to all of you reaching out and sharing the Black Deaf experience. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Yvonne Black. Really, we owe you a standing ovation. So here I am giving you your standing ovation, my dear. As we think about the work that has taken place over the last 3 years in making this happen, our hats are off to you.
The work's not finished yet. Still more to come.
Absolutely.
And all of you will also have to put in some work.
And I'm happy that you are still a part of the steering committee because you are has such great value to contribute to the committee.
I definitely agree. Your work has been absolutely amazing.
Thank you very much. The show is yours. Bye-bye.
At this time, we would like to introduce our steering committee to you. And so if we can get the PowerPoint slide to come up there. I think you all can see the PowerPoint slide. We have Dr. Carolyn McCaskill and myself. We are the co-chairs of the Kendall School Division II Steering Committee. Yeah, please do stay on that slide for now. I want to go through and introduce our members to you. You probably see some faces that you recognize. We have Yvonne Black. She is our project lead. We also have Christopher Hoffman. He is our campus design and planning. And if you could, please do go back to that slide. Thank you so much. We have Delricia Morns. She is our graduate student assistant. We have Nick Gould, the executive director of institutional advancement. And lastly, we have Brandy Raris, who is the chief marketing and undergraduate admissions officer. Next, we have our stakeholders. So if we can please get that PowerPoint slide. If we can please show the PowerPoint of the stakeholders. We have Bumi, Ina, who is the EDI representative. We have Allison Polk, who is our representative from the development office. We have JC Smith, our Black Student Union representative. Kaylin Arlen Lozano, our graduate student assistant. We have Howard Rosenblum, the CEO of the National Association of the Deaf. Carol Miller, who is a member of the Miller family. Franklin Jones. He's the Black gentleman that you see pictured in the upper left-hand corner with a long blue shirt. We have Ty Gordano, representing the Clare Center. We have Lamarck Williamson. He is the staff of color representative. And if we look to our last line of photos, we have Mr. Bernie Palmer. He is the former project lead and a Gallaudet alum. Derek Beam Josa, who is also representing the development office on this project. If you look to the middle row, we have a right-hand upper corner, we have Jessica Fine. And then from the campus, Office of Campus Design and Planning. The final row, lower left-hand corner, we have Mr. Dorian Fletcher representing DC ABDA, our DC Black Deaf Advocates chapter. Next to Dorian, we have Thais Wright, representing the Clare Center. Allison Polk from the Development Office. We also have Andrew Waneski, and he is representing our student body government. He is the SBG president. Bottom row, middle photo, African-American woman in braids, Zelly Meadows, representing our Black Deaf alumni and MBDA. I already introduced to you Mr. Lamarck Williamson, who is from the Undergraduate Admissions Office and the Development Office. The final picture that you see, bottom right-hand corner, African-American gentleman in glasses, is Mr. Gerald Miller, who you have already met via his interview. At this time, we want to review with you our process for renaming the Miller Memorial. This is actually the new memorial. It's very exciting. It's an opportunity for us to actually recognize the Black Deaf experience. We have actually gotten feedback from the Black Deaf community and various stakeholders that the Kendall School Division II Memorial, that name itself is inappropriate. The name Kendall actually comes from Amos Kendall, who was an individual who gave us the land for Gallaudet University to build the school and the university, of course. Amos Kendall was a white slave owner. The Division II school was also a school that was named following the conventions of segregation. And so, with that understanding, we want to make sure that Black deaf people are recognized for their tireless efforts in fighting for integration and equality. We need to celebrate the Black deaf experience, and the current name fails to do that. So we, the members of the steering committee, have decided to invite our stakeholders that I just mentioned to you all, and the Black deaf community to come together so that we can jointly identify potential names for the new memorial. This memorial is for the Black deaf community. And we have to begin with the name of the memorial. We want to be sensitive. We want to have shared leadership and shared acceptance, because this is going to be a very unique marker for our community. Given that, we will convene the stakeholders, the Black deaf community, and the steering committee to work together to come up with a list of potential names. We will then hand over the slate of names to the Board of Trustees for their review and approval. We will then take that slate of names and allow the public to help us finalize the name that will be chosen in order to rename the current memorial. Carolyn, what do you think of this process?
I think it's wonderful for us to involve all pieces of the community so that everyone has a sense of ownership. The stakeholder group is diverse, and I think it's about time that we have these people together because, as was explained, we still have pain points as we look back on our various memories and things that have occurred in time. So we don't want to continue to look back in a negative way and to have negative memories of the past in terms of Kendall and slavery and him being a slave owner. With this Kendall Division 2 school being a segregated school and those negative memories, we decided it would be better to come up with a different name. We want to involve the community in that effort and decide what is going to be the most appropriate name, the name that really fits historically with what has happened. So I'm definitely excited and looking forward to having the community involved in that process so that we can feel that it's a part of our history.
Absolutely. I am very much looking forward to the naming process that we will begin upon. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for sharing your thoughts. At this time, would you like to introduce the two students who have been involved in this project?
Yes, would be my pleasure. I would like to introduce the two students who took a course with me this past fall semester at Gallaudet University. I teach a course called The Dynamics of Oppression, and I have a group of students who are involved in that class. So I'm going to call Summer Seeger and Natalie Marcello. And these two students will share the work that they did, the research that they did for the class. Hi, Natalie.
Hello.
Hi, Summer. How are you two doing?
Doing good.
Good. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the Kendall School Memorial Project webinar. And I would like for the two of you to perhaps share your team research and to explain what the topics were, the topics that you chose in brief, please. And doesn't matter to me who goes first.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Natalie Marcello, and my partner Wendy and I researched the mother of Kenneth Miller, Louise Miller, as well as other parents who filed the lawsuit for deaf children's rights to get education at Kendall School. While we were doing our research for our paper, we learned so much about the Miller family, and we learned about the lawsuit and all that was going on during the civil rights era. Kendall School was once integrated, but it was definitely a challenge. And Miss Miller wanted to send her child to Kendall School, but she was denied access because he was a Black student. So he started going to the Pennsylvania School for the Deaf, and then later on went to the Maryland School for the Deaf because it was closer nearby. But there were parents like Miss Miller who got together and filed a complaint with the DC Board of Education, and they won that lawsuit. And so that was a point in history that we can't deny. It allowed them access to Kendall School. However, it was a school that was segregated at that time. So during the time of segregation, there were students who came there and it was built near the old gym building on campus. But it was very small, brick building with not enough space for all of the desks. In fact, all the materials that they had were old. And about a year later, they did some upgrades on the building. And that building was demolished for the construction of the Kellogg Hotel. So it wasn't until 1954 with the Brown versus Board of Education, when that lawsuit was won, that integration of schools became a reality. So their persistence in continuing to work on this effort and to continue to focus on the provision of education for Black deaf children was so important. It was a moment in history for Black deaf students and a moment of civil rights importance in the history of Black deaf people. So as we focus on Black deaf children and the parents who were involved in that situation, they were the ones who empowered the deaf community. So we want to recognize the hard work of the parents as well as that of the Miller family. So that was the information that I chose to focus on in terms of Black deaf history. I know that we need to make a record of all of it, whether we're talking about events that happen on campus or off campus. It's an important part of Black deaf history, and their legacy will continue through this project.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Now, Summer, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Summer. In my research project, there were another group of students for Dr. McCastle's class, and we focused our research project on the Miller Memorial. We particularly made our focus the other 23 students that attended the school. Those students also need to be memorialized because their experience is so very important to capture as well. We want to make sure that that experience doesn't disappear. And it's just important to recognize every individual's contribution and to celebrate those contributions through this project. We were curious to know about their lives, what happened to them so that we can actually benefit future generations of the deaf community. I hope that those stories will inspire greater change. And so in researching their experiences, we were curious about their experiences even from 1905 all the way up till 1952. So we wanted to learn more about why did the situation transpire as it did? What influenced change to happen? And so for research purposes, we wanted to look at those 23 students. We divided them into 3 categories, actually. We had a group of students, so we were able to divide the 23 students up, and we each focused on a different group of students. We wanted to research their individual histories with the goal of capturing their stories through internet research. We also we could use Google, we use the Gallaudet Library, and also the Gallaudet Archives. During our research, we found minimal information on some of these individuals. We actually couldn't find a lot of information about them. And so we decided that we wanted to be able to interview some of the members of the Miller family so that we could actually get more information. And then that would lead us to verify the information that we had captured on the other 23 students. So the Miller family, they said of those 23 students, 5 of the students are still living. And so through our research, we're hoping that we will be able to continue to perhaps set up some interviews with those 5 remaining members of their class while they're still alive. And so hopefully, if we can conduct those interviews, we'll be able to find out more even about the lives of the students who have passed away, because it's important for us to capture their story as well. So this is an ongoing project for us that we're very excited about.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Summer. I really appreciate the two of you taking my class and the research that you did and the research that you will continue to do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for giving us the opportunity. Dr. Moore speaking. Natalie and Summer, thank you so very much for sharing your research with us. I look forward to learning more about your research results.
Thank you, everyone. All right, we're back. I did want to say I'm really sorry with the technical issues that we've faced today. Hopefully we'll get everything all worked out and be ready for our next series in the webinar series. As I mentioned earlier, it's a series of 4. We are now focused on awareness. Our next webinar will be focused on freedom. And then we have 2 other webinars coming to the future, remembrance and healing. So we'll do better. We'll get better as time goes by in terms of the technological issues. So thank you so much for your patience.
All right. Now we will be opening it up for a Q&A.
Indeed.
Let me ask Yvonne Black to join us at this time as well.
Hello.
For a period of questions and answers.
Yes, so we're open to the audience to ask questions.
Carolyn, I saw that there were a couple of questions that people really were just dying to know. And one of them was, where can they get the shirt for the Center of Black Deaf Studies? And people are also asking if you can share a link where contributions can be made to. So if we can have those 2 in the chat. There was another question. What happened to the people, other people's lives? And, how can we make sure that we don't miss anything? Or is there a website that we can find more information at? I believe the Center for Black Deaf Studies is available online, but I just wanted to share some of the questions people had in the chat.
As far as the t-shirts, I'm happy that you love them. I absolutely love that the Miller family put them on. I wear them as well. However, today we are wearing purple in honor of Miss Louise Miller because that was one of her favorite colors, and I love purple as well. Now, getting back to the topic of the t-shirts, we will post that information soon. There are several other people who've asked me about them and are interested in purchasing the t-shirts. So we'll post that information shortly as to how you can purchase them. We haven't set up a process yet, but we are currently working with the business office to make sure that we work that out. So soon, we'll advertise it soon. Okay, and what was the other question?
So there was information that's been shared in the chat as far as where people can find details on the memorial. And another question was, how many students showed up when the Division II school was opened? Do we know?
There were 23 students at the Kendall Division II school, and some of them are still alive today. I believe that Kenneth mentioned there are 4 or 5 students who are still alive. And I would really love to interview them and love to get a chance to meet them and to hear their stories. I think that they are definitely an important part of the history of this occasion as well. Right now, we don't have all of those names, but Kenneth did mention, I think Robert Mort, oh, somebody who recently passed away. So there are 4 or 5 students who are still alive at this time. Robert Milburn was that student. So anyway, the goal is that we have the students who are doing the research do more research about those who are still surviving and also find other information. There are gaps in what we know, but we're definitely curious to find out more about their background, where they worked, what their family life was like. So that's a part of our plan that we will continue to do research on all 23 of the students. So the 2 students who were in my course who just presented, as they mentioned, they've already started working on that project of doing research to find out more information about the 23 students.
And tagging along with Carolyn's remarks, we do have the names of people who are still living. One of them lives in Florida and another person lives in Virginia. We're doing our best to collect that information. We know that one of the students is currently in a nursing home. So as a part of the project lead responsibilities, I'll make sure to collect their information because we do want to make sure that we're able to collect as much information as we can, and we'll be sure to share with the community members as a part of our next steps. Okay, so I think there's no more questions in the chat, but if anything comes up, feel free to look at the information that's posted. And again, for some of you who missed some of what we shared, we'll have this available on Facebook as well as YouTube for your reference. Now I'll take a look at the Q&A. Okay, someone asked why purple. The reason we wore purple is because Louise Miller loved the color purple. In the second of our series, we'll have more information to share with the community.
Great idea.
Who knows? Maybe we'll sing Purple Rain. We'll see. I also want to especially recognize those that have contributed for quite some time, especially the class of 1992 and their donations being the first class to donate to this project. Thank you so much to the class of 1992. And to all the other classes, make sure you follow suit. This month is Kindness Month, okay? Also, for the photographs that were taken on November 19th, we'll also post those so people can see what the facial expressions were when the family arrived on campus and as they went about their day on November 19th. We'll share those photographs. There are people that are hoping that we can broadcast this nationwide through PBS, and I'm glad to say, indeed, that is the plan. The Center for Black Deaf Research is really focusing on this and trying to put it on the forefront. This is so significant because it took place before Brown versus Board of Education and should be an exhibit in the African American history of African American, Museum of African American History and Culture. More information forthcoming. And I think that completes my responses to these questions.
Have we answered all of the questions in the Q&A? Are we ready for the wrap-up? I do want to thank everyone who was involved today with this project, and thank the audience for being here at the webinar. You were fabulous. Thank you. And I would say keep an eye out for future webinars. And please do visit gallyshare.com, Center for Black Deaf Studies, for further information.
Indeed.
Thank you once again.
And before we close, the teacher in me has to acknowledge these 4 different levels. And for today, the first level was awareness. Okay.
Awareness.
The second will be freedom.
Freedom.
The third will be remembrance.
Remembrance.
And the fourth, healing.
Healing.
Keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you for watching.